Hi, guys. This first interview is with Brian Brooks. He moved from the OCC to Bitfury.
First of all, let's define some terms, okay? Regulation does not mean suing people. And the approach the SEC's had for the last couple of years has been to not tell anyone what the rules are in advance, but to sue people after they've launched a project, started a company, listed a token, and then cause people to infer what the rules were later. That's not a good thing. And so at some point, Congress and the regulators need to get serious about telling people, what is the speed limit on the crypto highway and what projects are appropriate and good. Once we set frameworks and rules for those things, you'll see a flourishing. But until then, you're going to see a lot of people very nervous about investing in the space.
Well, does that have anything to do with that chart you're looking at right now, or is that just a chart you overlay the NASDAQ with?
No, I think there are a bunch of things going on here. And this is the problem with doing technical market analysis, right? Every chart is like tea leaves you can read something into. But I think with Bitcoin and crypto broadly, there are two things going on right now. One is we've talked before about the idea that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge. And the more the market expects tough policy from the Fed, the less Bitcoin is necessary as an inflation hedge. I've debated this on this program a number of times before. But right now, people seem to think the Fed is going to keep an aggressive posture for longer because of Jay Powell's recent speech, and that would tend to harm Bitcoin. But the other thing going on is, you think about what happened a couple of weeks ago when Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and some other prominent Democratic senators sent a letter to my old agency asking them to pull back all of the regulation that I had imposed when I was in office that was an attempt to provide both safety and clarity. Their view seems to be, no, let's not let Bitcoin anywhere close to the regulated sphere of the economy, meaning banks and broker-dealers. That tends to suggest that this is going to remain a niche asset that will be risky and non-standard. That isn't what markets like. If the big asset managers of the world are going to touch crypto, there has to be a rule set. Why these senators don't want the activity to be happening within the regulatory perimeter, that's a good question. But that tends to be negative for price.
All right, so the first thing he said was the SEC is claiming that they want to give regulatory clarity, but instead what they're doing is just suing everyone, right? The next piece of information that he talks about is Senator Warren, Senator Sanders, and a couple other Democratic senators came out and they opposed his interpretive letter. While he was at the OCC, he wrote an interpretive letter for all the banks and what the guidelines are for crypto assets, and they tried to get that pulled back. So you could tell he was kind of a little angry about it from the way he describes it. So the next piece of information, this comes from CoinDesk.
Queries, it says crypto, XLM, Zcash, Zen, maybe securities. And if you guys don't know, these are part of Grayscale's assets under management. And these three assets make up approximately $18.7 billion. And there's just a bunch of uncertainty whether these tokens are securities or not. I actually want to toss this over to Zach for his thoughts.
Well, we saw this in the motion against Coinbase, not these particular cryptos being named, but these are additional ones that are being named that may fall under additional regulatory scrutiny, right? There may be additional disclosures that are required of these assets. There may be additional hoops that listers on the exchange side have to jump through. And this is potentially difficult for some of these projects, right? They've sort of long maintained that these are cryptocurrencies or these are commodities. These are not securities. These are not investment contracts in the particular projects that are standing up these blockchains and supporting their growth. So for these to be added to the list, some of it makes sense, right? We've seen XRP; they're in a long running securities lawsuit. XLM, right? Xcode that is, I think, it was forked from XRP way long ago, right? So the fact that that's included maybe makes some sense. That these others are also included and under scrutiny seems to be in keeping with what the SEC is thinking as it relates to some of these digital assets. And I think it is incumbent upon the Grayscales and the Coinbases of the world to now say, hey, we need the clarity here so that we're not just doing this on a piecemeal basis after we've spun up business operations around these various assets that we've understood to operate under different frameworks than what.
So Deaton's been saying this all along. The XRP lawsuit's going to open the door for every other crypto. Now it looks like the SEC is going after XLM, Zcash, and Zen. And what's crazy is this CoinDesk, right? That of any type of crypto newspaper, any type of crypto magazine, they all have their biases, right? But I remember like these guys on this show kind of like laughing about the XRP case, and they're, patting themselves on the back. And now it's a concern because Zcash and Zen doesn't have clarity. They don't really care about XLM because it's just a fork of the XRP ledger. But anytime you listen to any of these crypto newspapers, just realize they're extremely biased, and I don't know what motive is behind their biases. I hope it's not because they're being paid to do that, but it wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, they always talk about like XRP being like some banker's coin. Why? Because Garlinghouse is dressed in a suit and shows some professionalism, while Vitalik has a unicorn T-shirt on. I mean, come on. All right, so this next piece of information comes from Forecast, and it says most crypto still junk. JPMorgan's blockchain lead claims. So Umar Farouk has said that excluding a few dozen tokens, most cryptocurrencies are bound to go away. So what are the few dozen tokens that JPMorgan's blockchain unit think have utility, right? So we'll find out, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be invested in them when they do get utilized. The next piece of information comes from Bloomberg Markets, and this is about Pakistan being bailed out by the IMF.
That Sri Lanka saw, and Pakistan won't be defaulting on any payments. It means that, Pakistan has been able to do enough to get into an IMF program. And what's going to happen now is that we're going to see, a snowball effect in which, Arab nations are going to send in, or they've committed at least $9 billion. And it's expected that, World Bank and ADB will also commit money. So I think Pakistan, that has seen its foreign exchange reserves drop by half in the past year, it's expected that's going to go up again because there was a massive IMF delay, which has finally gone through with the announcement yesterday.
So, Fosse, what's next for the economy?
All right, so Pakistan needs a bailout from the IMF. So think about that. The nation of Pakistan doesn't have enough money to pay off their debt. So they go to the IMF and they get SDRs, right? And it's this long process. And he brings up Sri Lanka. Didn't get the IMF bailout. Right now there's civil unrest in Sri Lanka. There's all types of horrible things happening. And look at in the background, it's showing Pakistan's inflation rate. It's almost up to 28%, and it's not good. Pakistan's being bailed out by the IMF, and I think a lot of these developing nations are going to have the same type of outcome where they're going to go for loans to the IMF. Now, throughout history, since the dollar is the reserve currency, usually it was the U.S. that bailed everybody out, right? But this time around, it's the IMF bailing people out because the U.S. isn't in the good enough position to bail everyone out. So the next piece of information is, this is the Central Bank of Egypt. They posted this PDF, FinTech from Evolution to Revolution, MENA. Now, this PDF, when I click on it now, brings me to a 403 forbidden. So I copied this, put it in Google, and I was able to bring up the cached version of it. So you can do the same thing. You can find the cached version on Google. But the main takeaway, it was pretty interesting PDF. They talked about, just different areas in the Middle East that are using blockchain technology, where the regulators are, and it looks like everybody's moving forward with blockchain there. But one excerpt that I took out is, although not MENA regions, the fintech startup Ripple has collaborated with MENA banks. For example, Ripple collaborated with NCB in Saudi Arabia that will enable cross-border payments, allowing new payment channels to open towards North America and Asia that were not available before. So this whole area was RippleNet, where they're sending payments through RippleNet, like ISO payments through all the different banks in the domestic area. But now they're opening up to North America as well as Asia. And we just recently saw some type of partnership with SBI and I believe NBK. And they were doing ODL, right? So this area is going to open up. So anytime that you see these corridors, ripples all over, and you see two corridors, ripples all over, and they start connecting, there's a good probability that those banks are going to use ODL, and that's XRP, right? So found that pretty interesting. Next piece of information is from this PDF. This is focus on Web3. Now, let me give you some context before I read this. Remember, I did a video a while back where they were talking about VCs investing in crypto. And the main thing that they look for is where the developers are going, where the best of the best talent is headed. And that's how VCs like Andreessen and Horowitz find their coins that they invest in bear markets, is they look for just where all the talent's headed. So LinkedIn Talent Insights suggests that in 2021, talent has mainly been flowing between blockchain companies such as Coinbase, Crypto.com, Gemini, and Ripple. So, next piece of information, this is Christian Carlos, Wilkie Farr, and Gallagher. The SEC and CFTC proposed substantial amendments to Form PF. So, if we look down here, including digital assets. So Form PF is where the Security and Exchange Commission's is mandating private fund advisors to report regulatory assets under management to the FSB. So they're asking for all these hedge funds to say, what digital assets do you own? So when this law takes place, we'll finally know what everyone's invested in. So that could potentially be something. Next piece of information comes from Cointelegraph. So this came out of Russia, the Prime Minister of Russia. Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin declared a strategic session, the development of the domestic financial system, on Tuesday. And an excerpt on here, this will bring you to the Central Bank of Russia's website, or you can translate it into English, and the quote's accurate. We need to intensively develop innovative areas, including the adoption of digital assets. This is a safe alternative for all parties that can guarantee uninterrupted payments for the supply of goods from abroad and for export. So that's what our thesis has always been, that these technologies, they're neutral by design. Nobody controls it, nobody is able to sanction it, nobody's able to do anything with it. If you've been listening to Jim Rickards, he talks about like the difference between a payment reserve currency versus an actual reserve currency. And just our policies, I think we're moving away from the dollar, from payments currency. Now, people will argue that the reserve currency is might go away, which it very well might, but the shorter term, the payments currency is what matters, and eventually, the reserve currency will tumble, but not yet. Not for a long time, until there's bond markets, there's deep liquid markets with some other type of currency. So the next piece of information comes from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Rave Menyon. He says yes to digital asset innovation, no to cryptocurrency speculation. So he's been preaching utility. I believe I had the video of him saying this on one of my prior videos, but utility is what's going to count in the long run, and the speculation will go away after some of the volatility is taken away. The last piece of information I found pretty interesting. It's Augustin Carstens, and he's kind of in this fight with governments. He's saying that governments are spending too much money to stop inflation. The central banks can only do so much. The governments are going to actually have to cut back on spending. So listen to what he has to say.
The sources to spend. Who does this affect the most?
Well, I think at this stage it's more a problem for advanced economies. I think advanced economies have overused fiscal and monetary policy to get economic activity going. And what we have seen, and that's what I claim in my speech today, is that those policies have hit a limit. the policy space is not there any longer. Take, for example, monetary policy. If you implement a very aggressive monetary policy, it would only go to inflation.
Right.
If you stimulate too much the economy to fiscal, it will enhance also debt. It will increase aggregate demand and will also generate more inflation. And therefore, what fiscal policy is bringing will have to be taken away by monetary policy.
Now, in a previous
So I hope you all enjoyed the show. Please tell me what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.